My name is Kate Morrison. I'm 32 years old, and if you had asked me 2 years ago what my biggest fear was, would have said never being enough. Never measuring up. Never hearing my parents say they were proud of me the way they said it about my sister. I thought the worst thing that could happen was living in someone's shadow forever. I was wrong. The worst thing was realizing I'd been chasing approval from people who were never going to give it, and the moment that realization hit me wasn't dramatic or cinematic. It was a Tuesday afternoon at my parents' house during what was supposed to be a casual family dinner. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My mother was setting the table when she laughed, that sharp, dismissive laugh that always made my stomach tighten. Your sister just closed another deal, Kate. Another six-figure client. When are you ever going to be successful like Claire? My father didn't even look up from his phone. He just nodded, as if her words were a simple statement of fact, not a knife twisted slowly into my ribs. And Claire, my perfect, polished older sister, sat across from me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She said nothing, but her silence spoke volumes. That smirk, subtle and satisfied, told me everything I needed to know. She enjoyed this. She always had. I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, frozen in a moment I'd lived 1,000 times before. But this time, something inside me shifted. This time, I didn't scramble to defend myself or list my accomplishments like I was on trial. I didn't force a smile and change the subject. I just set my fork down, looked at my mother, and said, "That's wonderful for Claire. I'm really happy for her." Then I stood up, grabbed my coat, and walked out. No explanation. No drama. Just silence. And for the first time in my life, that silence felt like power. What my parents didn't know, what Claire certainly didn't know, was that 3 days earlier, I'd received an email that changed everything. A publisher, a real one, had accepted my manuscript. The novel I'd been writing in secret for 2 years, the one I'd poured my heart into while working double shifts as a freelance graphic designer, was going to be published. Advance included. Marketing budget included. Book tour being discussed. I hadn't told anyone because I wanted to be sure. I wanted to hold that victory close, just for myself, before the world could touch it. And now, sitting in my car outside my parents' house, hands shaking on the steering wheel, I realized something crucial. I didn't owe them this news. I didn't owe them anything. I drove home to my small studio apartment in Portland, the one my mother always called cozy in that tone that really meant too small. The city lights blurred past my windows as I replayed the dinner in my mind. Claire's smirk. My father's indifference. My mother's casual cruelty disguised as concern. They'd been doing this my entire life, holding Claire up as the golden standard while I scrambled for scraps of validation. Claire had the corporate job, the downtown condo, the finance boyfriend who wore suits that cost more than my rent. She had the life they understood, the life they could brag about at their country club. And me, I was the artsy one, the dreamer, the disappointment who chose passion over practicality. When I got home, I didn't cry. I didn't call my best friend Emma to vent. I just sat on my second-hand couch, opened my laptop, and reread the email from the publisher. Dear Ms. Morrison, we are thrilled to offer you a publishing contract for your novel, Silence Between Stars. The words felt surreal, like they belonged to someone else's life. But they were mine. This was mine. And for the first time in years, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Pride. Real, unshakable pride that had nothing to do with anyone else's opinion. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Kate, you left so abruptly last night. Your father and I were just being honest. You're 32. Don't you think it's time to get serious about your future? I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. I didn't block her. I didn't send an angry reply. I just let the silence sit there, heavy and deliberate. Because I'd finally learned something that took me 3 decades to understand. Not every question deserves an answer. Not every criticism deserves a defense. And some people will never see your worth, no matter how brightly you shine. The key is to stop performing for an audience that's already decided you're not enough. I didn't tell anyone about the book deal for 2 weeks. Not Emma, not my coworkers, not even the barista at my favorite coffee shop who always asked how my writing was going. I kept it locked inside like a secret weapon, something precious that couldn't be tainted by doubt or judgment. Instead, I focused on the practical steps. I signed the contract, worked with my editor on revisions, approved the cover design that made my heart race every time I looked at it. The book was real. It was happening. And it was mine alone. During those 2 weeks, my mother called 3 times. I let them all go to voicemail. The messages were variations of the same theme. Your sister mentioned you seemed upset at dinner. You're being sensitive. We're just trying to help you. Claire called once too, her voice syrupy with false concern. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Hey Katie, Mom said you're mad. I wasn't trying to make you feel bad. You know I love you, right? I didn't respond to that one either. Because Claire had been doing this since we were kids, delivering little cuts with a smile, then acting confused when I bled. At work, I kept my head down and my mouth shut. I was freelancing for a small marketing agency, designing logos and social media graphics for local businesses. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid my bills and gave me flexibility to write. My boss, a kind woman named Sandra, noticed I seemed lighter somehow. You've been smiling more lately, she said one afternoon. New boyfriend? Better, I said. New beginning. She didn't push for details, just nodded knowingly. Those are always the best kind. 3 weeks after the dinner, I ran into Claire at the grocery store. She was in the organic section, examining avocados with the kind of intensity she usually reserved for spreadsheets. She looked perfect as always, hair blown out, makeup flawless, designer athleisure that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. When she saw me, her face lit up with that practiced smile. Katie, oh my God. I've been trying to reach you. I kept pushing my cart, grabbing a bag of coffee without breaking stride. I've been busy. She followed me down the aisle. Mom's really worried. She thinks you're depressed or something. I'm not depressed, I said evenly. I'm just done. Done with what? With performing for an audience that's already decided I'm not worth watching. Her smile faltered. That's dramatic. Is it? I stopped walking and turned to face her. Because from where I'm standing, I've spent 32 years trying to prove I'm good enough, smart enough, successful enough. And it's exhausting, Claire. So I'm done. She blinked, clearly not expecting this version of me. The version that didn't apologize or backtrack. Katie, we're family. Family supports each other. They don't compare and diminish, I said quietly. They don't laugh when you're struggling or smirk when you're hurting. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. I never meant to make you feel that way. I didn't argue. I just gave her the same polite smile I'd give a stranger. Take care, Claire. Then I walked away, leaving her standing there holding an overpriced avocado. That evening, I met Emma for dinner at our favorite Thai place downtown. She took one look at me and said, something happened. You look different. I told her everything. The book deal, the dinner, the grocery store confrontation. She listened without interrupting, her eyes getting wider with each detail. When I finished, she reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Kate Morrison, published author. I'm going to need a signed copy. You're getting the first one, I promised. She grinned. And your family? Are you going to tell them? Eventually, I said. But on my terms. When I'm ready. Not because I need their approval, but because I want them to know that I succeeded without it. Emma raised her glass. To success that tastes better because you earned it yourself. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling something warm and solid settling in my chest. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for permission to be proud of myself. I wasn't waiting for my parents to notice or Claire to acknowledge. I was just moving forward, building something real, something that belonged entirely to me. And it felt like freedom. The publisher released my book cover on social media 6 weeks before the launch date. I wasn't prepared for what happened next. The design was stunning, midnight blue with silver lettering that looked like stars scattered across a dark sky. Silence Between Stars by Kate Morrison. My name. My words. My dream made tangible. The publisher's post got shared hundreds of times, and suddenly my phone was exploding with notifications from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Old college friends, former coworkers, even my high school English teacher who'd always believed in my writing. Everyone was congratulating me, asking where they could pre-order, telling me they couldn't wait to read it. Everyone except my family. Radio silence from my parents. Nothing from Claire. I told myself I didn't care, that I'd already made peace with their absence from this victory. But late at night, scrolling through the comments and messages, I felt a small ache that I couldn't quite ignore. Not because I needed their approval anymore, but because it was still strange to celebrate something this monumental while the people who raised me pretended it wasn't happening. Emma noticed during one of our coffee dates. You keep checking your phone. Waiting for something? Someone, I admitted. But I shouldn't be. She squeezed my hand. You're allowed to want your parents to be proud of you, Kate. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. 2 days later, my mother finally called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Her voice was tight, controlled. Kate, I saw something online. About a book. It's real, I said simply. Why didn't you tell us? Because you never asked what I was working on. You only ever asked when I'd be more like Claire. There was a long pause. Then she said, we would have been happy for you. Would you? Because when I tried to talk about my writing, you called it a hobby. When I said I was pursuing publication, Dad said I was wasting time on pipe dreams. Another silence, heavier this time. Your sister saw it too. She's upset you didn't tell her. Of course she is, I said. Claire's used to being the star of every conversation. This isn't about her. My mother's voice sharpened. That's unfair. Claire has always supported you. Has she? Or has she just enjoyed being the favored one while I scrambled for scraps? My mother made a small sound, something between a gasp and a scoff. You're being cruel. No, I said, surprisingly calm. I'm being honest. There's a difference. She hung up without saying goodbye. I set my phone down and realized my hands weren't shaking. I wasn't spiraling into guilt or second-guessing myself. I just felt clear, like I'd finally said something that needed to be said for years. 3 days later, Claire posted on Instagram. A photo of herself at a bookstore, holding a stack of business books. Caption, always investing in growth and knowledge. Success is a journey, not a destination. The comments were full of praise. So inspiring. You're such a go-getter. Love your mindset. I scrolled past without reacting. But Emma, who followed Claire out of morbid curiosity, sent me a screenshot with a single message, she's threatened. I smiled at my phone. Good. Let her be. The pre-orders started climbing. My publisher called to say they were increasing the first print run. A local bookstore reached out about hosting my launch event. A book blogger with 50,000 followers requested an early review copy. Everything was happening faster than I'd imagined, and for the first time in my life, I was experiencing success without the weight of family expectations crushing it. This victory was clean. It was mine. And nobody could diminish it because I'd built it entirely on my own terms. Then my father texted. Brief, formal. Congratulations on the book. Your mother showed me the publisher's website. Impressive. I read it twice, looking for warmth or genuine pride. There was none. Just acknowledgement, delivered like he was commenting on the weather. I typed back a single word. Thanks. He didn't respond. That night, I opened a bottle of wine and sat on my tiny balcony, looking out at the Portland skyline. The city lights twinkled like promises, and somewhere out there, people were pre-ordering my book. People who didn't know me, didn't owe me anything, but wanted to read my words anyway. That mattered more than any half-hearted text from a father who'd spent 3 decades making me feel invisible. I raised my glass to the sky and whispered, "This one's for me." The book launched on a Thursday in October, and the release party at Powell's Books was packed beyond anything I'd imagined. Over 100 people showed up, filling the rows of chairs and standing along the back wall. Emma sat front row with a homemade sign that said, "Local author, international talent." Sandra from work brought half the office. Even my landlord came, telling me he always knew I'd make it big. I read an excerpt from chapter 3, my voice only shaking slightly at the beginning, then settled into a rhythm that felt natural. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. During the signing afterward, a woman in her 60s held my hand and said, "This book made me feel seen. Thank you for writing it." I almost cried right there at the table. My parents didn't come. Claire didn't come. I'd sent them both invitations, formal ones printed by the publisher, but received no response. Part of me had hoped, despite everything, that they'd show up. That they'd see this moment and finally understand what I'd been working toward all these years. But their absence was its own answer, and I'd learned to stop translating silence into anything other than what it was. Indifference. The book started climbing the regional bestseller lists within a week. My publisher scheduled interviews with local media. A podcast about emerging authors wanted me as a guest. The reviews were overwhelmingly positive, with readers praising the emotional depth and the way I captured the complexity of family relationships and self-discovery. One reviewer wrote, "Morrison writes with the kind of honesty that makes you examine your own life. This is a debut that announces a major talent." I read that line 10 times, letting it sink in like medicine. Then, exactly 2 weeks after launch, my mother called again. "Kate, we need to talk." "I'm listening," I said, though I wasn't sure I wanted to. She took a breath. "Your father and I have been thinking. We'd like to have dinner. A proper celebration for your book. We could invite some family friends, make it special." "Why now?" I asked. "Because you've done something worth celebrating," she said, as if it were obvious. "And before? When I was writing it? When I was working 3 jobs to pay rent while finishing the manuscript? Where was the celebration then?" "Kate, don't be difficult. We're trying to be supportive now." "That's the problem," I said quietly. "You're only interested now that it's successful. Now that you can brag about it to your friends. Now that it reflects well on you." "That's not fair," she protested. "Isn't it?" I pressed. "You laughed at my dreams for years. You compared me to Claire every chance you got. You made me feel like I was wasting my life. And now that there's proof I wasn't, you want to throw me a party." There was a long, brittle silence. Then my mother said, voice cold, "We were trying to protect you from disappointment. By guaranteeing I'd be disappointed in myself?" I shot back. "That's not protection, Mom. That's sabotage." She hung up again. I set my phone on the counter and went back to responding to reader emails, people who actually cared about the story I'd told. 3 days later, Claire showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door to find her standing there, designer purse clutched against her chest like armor. "We need to talk," she said. I didn't invite her in, just leaned against the doorframe. "So talk." She glanced past me into my apartment. "Can I come in?" "This works fine." Her jaw tightened. "Fine. Mom's upset. She thinks you're punishing them." "I'm not punishing anyone," I said. "I'm just not pretending anymore." Pretending what? That their approval matters. That I need them to validate my success. That I'm still that desperate little girl begging to be noticed. Claire flinched. Katie, that's harsh. Is it? Because I spent 30 years watching you bask in their praise while they treated everything I did like it was cute but ultimately meaningless. And you never once stood up for me. You enjoyed it. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. I didn't realize it bothered you that much. That's because you never asked. I softened slightly, not out of forgiveness, but out of exhaustion. Look, Claire. I'm happy for your success. I genuinely am. But I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. I need to protect my peace now. She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. Can we try again? Start over? Maybe someday, I said. But not today. Not while everyone's only interested because the book is doing well. She left without another word. I closed the door and leaned against it, breathing deeply. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Dinner tonight? I'm buying. We're celebrating you. I smiled and typed back. Absolutely. See you at 7. Because that's what I'd learned. Celebration doesn't require an audience of people who doubted you. It just requires people who genuinely want to see you win. And I'd finally found my people. 3 months after the book launch, I was at a literary festival in Seattle when I saw them. My parents and Claire, standing near the entrance of the convention center, scanning the crowd. My heart did that terrible thing where it stopped and raced at the same time. I considered turning around, disappearing into the crowd of authors and readers, but something kept me rooted. Maybe curiosity. Maybe closure. My mother spotted me first. Her face lit up with a smile I hadn't seen in years. Kate, there you are. We drove up to surprise you. Claire stood beside her, looking uncomfortable in a way I'd never seen before. My father hung back, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Why are you here? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. My mother stepped closer. Because we're proud of you. We wanted to see you speak on the panel. You're doing so well, sweetheart. I looked at the three of them, really looked, and felt nothing. No anger, no resentment, not even satisfaction. Just a quiet, settled calm. I appreciate you coming, I said carefully. But I need to get ready for my panel. Maybe we can talk after. My mother's smile wavered. We thought we could take you to dinner. Celebrate properly. I have plans with my publisher, I said. It wasn't a lie. We were meeting to discuss the sequel. But even if I didn't have plans, I wouldn't have said yes. Claire finally spoke up, her voice soft. Katie, I'm sorry. For everything. I should have been a better sister. I nodded, acknowledging her words without absolving her. That means something. But apologies don't erase years of hurt. She looked down. I know. My father cleared his throat. We made mistakes, Kate. We see that now. I met his eyes. You did. And I've forgiven you, not because you asked, but because carrying that weight was exhausting. But forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to how they were. It just means I'm choosing peace over bitterness. My mother reached for my hand. Can we try again? Build something new? I pulled back gently. Maybe. But it has to be real. No more comparisons, no more dismissing what matters to me. If you can respect who I am and what I do, we can talk. Otherwise, I'm okay on my own. The words hung in the air between us. My father nodded slowly. Fair enough. I glanced at my watch. I really do need to go. They stepped aside, and I walked past them toward the auditorium where my panel was starting in 15 minutes. Halfway there, I turned back. They were still standing in the same spot, watching me. I raised my hand in a small wave. Not goodbye, not welcome back. Just acknowledgement. Then I turned and kept walking toward a room full of people who valued my words, toward a future I'd built myself, toward a version of me that didn't need anyone's permission to exist. Later that night, alone in my hotel room, I opened my laptop and started writing the first chapter of my second novel. The words flowed easily, each sentence a step further into the life I'd chosen. Outside, the city glowed against the darkness. Inside, I felt complete. Not because my family had finally shown up, but because I'd learned the most important lesson. The people who matter will show up when it counts. And if they don't, you show up for yourself. That's the real evolution. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.